I mean, we know in Ayurvedic medicine that thousands of years ago, I mean, we just want to say 2,000 years ago in the written information, but it goes way further back than that. They knew about atoms, they knew about molecules, they knew about our temperatures, they knew about the importance of, do you run hot, do you run cold? Do you run dry, do you run moist? You know, are you a stimulated person? Are you a lethargic person? They knew how important this was to your functioning, and that how you eat and how you interact in your daily life is going to affect that positively or negatively.
You're listening to the Nutrition World Podcast, a show about navigating the intricacies of holistic wellness. We're a natural health food store located in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we believe that optimal health and peak performance should be accessible to everyone.
I want to welcome you today, Lynn Vitale, to Nutrition World's podcast. And thank you for coming all the way from Montana to join us. You know, I've spoke and I've actually written, I wrote a small ebook, and it was actually printed called How to Be Super Healthy and How to Not Be Sick All the Time was kind of the book's content. But in that, I talked about this word, ancient wisdom. I kept going back to this intuition that I had that we're going to talk about today, which is something that a lot of society has discounted and kind of had built around the area of health, that you got to have a PhD to figure out what to eat, how to be healthy. And you really don't, because the ancients, and especially even animals, have instincts to know how to put together a plan to maintain optimal and superior health. And so today you have a great amount of experience, certified nutritionist, Ayurvedic practitioner, National Educator for Garden of Life. And we're going to talk today about some of your insights as to the connection to this ancient wisdom regarding our health. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Ed. It's great to be here. I did fly all the way from Montana.
I know. I'm so gifted that you were able and willing to do that for us. Fortunately, this podcast is becoming quite popular, and because we can spread the word very easily, because this is the content that spreads words, is podcasting these days. And, I'm looking at a lot of content that's out there. And, back when Google changed the algorithms about 4 years ago, it really changed the ability of normal society to find good health information, because what used to be on page 1 or 2 or 3 is now buried in page 48, so you never get to it. That's because it's being manipulated in order to reach a certain agenda, which is not holistic nutrition, healthy eating in most cases. So I feel like it's my job, it's my legacy to put together partnering like you with people who understand and have observed and have worked for many, many years in this area of, I would say, less traditional health, certainly far less pharmaceutical interventions, and really taking control of our health through education. And I say this a lot, and I have in the past probably too much. I'd separate the world into two classes of people, one of which is either learners or non-learners. And if you don't have to be a learner about a lot of things in life, and you can still tread water pretty well, but with health, because there's such an agenda to make us victims, to get us on 17 pharmaceuticals a year, if you're not a learner, you're going to be a victim, one of the two. And so I want us to help educate people on this. So we're going to go back to the title of Ancient Wisdom, and that has to do with kind of the great-grandmama wisdom that we used to have about, what should we do when we're sick? What should we do to stay healthy? And these were people who didn't even really have much schooling in this, because we didn't even, we're talking 60 years ago. There wasn't a whole lot of information out there. But really, a lot of it's still common sense, isn't it?
You know what we're missing, Ed, is the power of observation. Because we're fed so much information. It started with radio and then TV and now the internet and, these social media feeds. We're just fed information, and we don't pause to observe. What common sense is coming out of a power of observation and then contemplation. Like, what am I observing? What does that mean? So when Grandma said, don't go out in that cold wind without your hat and scarf. Grandma, why do I do that? We were just talking about this. Well, the fact is, if your body temperature drops a partial degree, your enzymes don't work as well. Your immune system doesn't work as well. It's chemical reactions, and therefore you're more susceptible to the things that are always around you. So, these little bits of information that come from the power of observation. I mean, we know in Ayurvedic medicine that thousands of years ago, we just want to say 2,000 years ago in the written information, but it goes way further back than that. They knew about atoms. They knew about molecules. They knew about our temperatures. They knew about the importance of, do you run hot? Do you run cold? Do you run dry? Do you run moist? Are you a stimulated person? Are you a lethargic person? They knew how important this was to your functioning, and that how you eat and how you interact in your daily life is going to affect that positively or negatively.
And that came obviously from their superior ability to be observing and watching and then learning from that observation. Tell people real quick, Ayurvedic is kind of focused a little bit more on in India and that part of the country or world. And I've been a very big fan of Ayurvedic medicine because it really has some significant, nice benefits, even from a diagnostic standpoint. I remember going to a physician once that was Ayurvedic, and, he'd take all my pulses and do the tongue and do the different observations. He gave me some very good information. So that's been around how long? Thousands.
Well, we can see in the writings that it's been around at least 5,000 years.
Wow.
But I think a lot of the new archaeological information is showing us that it was around long before that. It just was never written down because, again, there's a really interesting story about that where once we write things down, we stop using our memory.
Really?
And so this is another thing where things being written in books where you can be like, I don't really need to remember that. I can go look for it. Whereas oral tradition used to be, that is the ancient way. And so all things that were important were passed through oral tradition, which meant you had to work to remember them. You had to work to attain them.
That.
You had to be prepared to use them. And so all the most powerful information was passed through oral tradition. So what is written is probably a fraction of what we once used to know as humans. And Ayurvedic wisdom, Ayurvedic medicine, Ayurvedic philosophy actually predates Chinese medicine even. And so for me, I always think, what went before that? What came before that? What was before that? What came first? I've been working my way back in time. So our concept of ancient wisdom, ancestral eating, ancestral medicine, we always have to ask, well, what did we used to do as humans? How did we handle that? How did we live? What was in the food that we ate? How did we put things together? How did we think about things? So Ayurvedic medicine has a lot of written knowledge about that, and then the rest is you can kind of extrapolate, because if you just kind of use your common sense, you can say, I went to pre-med. I went to medical school for a year. I studied all this stuff for nutrition, all the sciences, but it wasn't until I studied Ayurvedic medicine that everything really clicked. Of just a different way of looking at things.
And Ayurvedic, as many of the ancient wisdom techniques, have to do with recreating a balance within our system. Because if we have homeostasis, a real balanced chemistry, we're going to be more immune to sickness. We're going to live probably longer. We're going to have better quality life because the body knows what to do. And we've gotten into a world where, again, which is an agenda of the world, they want us to be a victim. And as long as we feel victims, you know what? When you're a victim, you have to look for the rescuer. And the rescuer is the walk-in clinic, the doctor, the phone call, the pharmacies. I will say, and I do this often, traditional medicine is amazing. I would not want to live in a world without it. Because if I have an accident, I have a heart attack, I'm not going to drive my car to Nutrition World to find the herbs for that particular disorder. If I have a massive UTI, I might have to use, some drugs or something. And I'm getting older, and there'll be a day where I might have to intervene slowly and slightly. But as far as maintaining health, it's really disaster. It truly is, because the average person is on about 10 plus pharmaceuticals per year. And it's really because they don't have a toolbox to embrace the other ideas of this world. And we've somehow have created the idea that if a person doesn't have massive textbook credibility, PhDs, MDs, that they're the only people who know everything. Well, they don't. They don't know anything about ancient wisdom, nothing, or ancestral eating and how it relates to soils, which we're going to talk about here. So I love these kind of conversations, and I want to hopefully break some people out of this mold that we have to have constant observation from our medical people to stay healthy. And honestly, and I've said this a couple times before, one of the miracles of our history that improved our health, because some people are going to listen to this and say, yeah, but the average lifespan back then was 42 years old. Partially true and partially not. The reason that it was so poor because we didn't have plumbers. Plumbers have been one of the greatest benefits to our health, because when you can't move your poop and pee away from where you live, you're going to have disease that is going to be rampant. Once we had plumbers, they did more for our health than almost anything else that's ever been invented. Thank you, plumbers.
Thank you, plumbers.
Yes, because that sanitation is very important. And then secondly, because we had such poor death rates at childbirth between the mother and the child, because we did not accept the fact that sanitation, again, was so important.
Fever
The fever. And the guy, Ichnos Simovis, I think was his name, was the physician who came up with the idea in that physicians should start washing their hands because it will create much better health and less death within the maternity wards. And he was basically put in an insane asylum, and he died there because they would not accept his idea that germs were causing this, because the physicians of those days they went to the morgue before they went to deliver babies, and the morgue, they'd never wash their hands, so they would deal with dead people, go in and deliver a baby. They had about a 35% death rate. They went down to 1% with his hand washing, but they didn't believe him. So they stuck him in a prison, and they stuck him in an insane asylum, and he died because of lack of ability to embrace these ideas. So let's get to the point. I love the fact that you live this life. You live basically going back to the ancient kind of primal connection to the earth, to the soil, to the foods. Explain, like you did a little bit earlier to me, about the connection between all of that and our health, and the fact that you don't have to be rich to follow this plan. You can use common sense again, and you can just make some changes in your life, and we can talk about the foods and the supplements. And I want to say real quickly, I love the fact that you also said with supplementation, which I rarely say, and I should, you know what, if you don't have enough funds to buy a lot of these things, if you just do these 2 times a week, if you have bought a really great multivitamin and you took it 2 times a week, you're going to benefit from that. That would make the cost so low if you can do that. And I love that idea, Amber.
Yeah. Where do I start? So I used to live in Brooklyn, New York, and before that I lived in Knoxville, Tennessee. So, I've always been interested in nutrition. Obviously, I'm a certified nutritionist. Ayurvedic medicine is all about food first, right? So I love food. But you realize that all the produce, even if you're in the organic section, even if you're at a farmer's market, it's been scrubbed clean, because that's what we like to see today. The whole sanitation thing. We don't want to see dirt on stuff and bugs. My kids, man, they see a bug on food, forget about it. If there's a worm in the broccoli, dinner's over, But this didn't used to bother our ancestors much. They were pretty used to that. Didn't faze them at all. So I talked that talk about the connection of our health to the soil. But if there isn't soil on your produce, you got to put it back in your diet. So this is where the soil-based organism supplements come in, and for Garden of Life, Primal Defense was the founding product, and it is talk about common sense. That is common sense. We are missing this from our diet because it isn't on our produce, because we don't want to see the dirt. Right. So we have to go back to let your kids play in the dirt. I always joke when I was in Brooklyn, if my daughter, when she was little, right, I buy her a nice grass-fed burger at the local burger joint. She drops it on the floor, patty down, right? And I'm like, pick it up and eat it. Brush it off. And she's like, seriously, Mom? Yes. I paid $20 for that burger. You pick that up and eat it, right? Not on the subway, though. Not on the subway, not in the subway station. You got your limits. So there's things that are dangerous for you out there that you don't want to consume. If you're on a farm, though, fast forward, we moved to Montana, and, we're cultivating the soil. We're composting so that midden heap of your kitchen scraps turns into something that is like gold for the soil. And the food that is growing in that is getting this whole interaction with the microbiome that makes that food more healthy. There has been an ongoing study, which I'm sure you're aware of, since the 1960s, of the nutrient content of our produce, of our plant food that is coming out of the soil in this country, and it's down by half what it was in the 1960s. When did the agricultural revolution, the green revolution start? It started after World War II, once we had figured out how to make the atomic bomb out of nitrogen and then fix nitrogen from the air and then turn it into a synthetic fertilizer and spread it all over farmland. Everything grew big. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, but it sucked all that nutrient content out of the soil. If the minerals are not in the soil, they won't be in the plant. They don't get put back in the soil spontaneously. They don't just show up there. They've been cultivated over gazillions of years, right? How do you put it back in the soil? Well, we have this tendency as humans. We mow our lawn, we take the cuttings away. We rake our leaves, we put them in a bag and ship them off. We weed, we put it in a bag and send it away. We poop and the plumber pipes it away, right? So all of this takes this nutrition away from the land. So regenerative farming, biodynamic farming, which it's an Ayurvedic concept, prior to there being regenerative farming, prior to there being biodynamic farming, there was Vriksha Ayurveda, and it goes way, way, way back. Or you go to the Amazon rainforest, and you look at the Terra Prieta, Amazonian black earth. There are bones in it. There's traces of fish. There's traces of human waste, dog waste. They composted everything to make an environment that supported farming and a huge population that rainforest can no longer support. That jungle can no longer support that. So we have to regenerate the soil. And I land in Montana on a pasture land, 25 acres, that has been neglected. And there's no life in the soil. And we have to put it back. Bit by bit, you have to put soil-based organisms back in. Otherwise, you cannot break down the organic matter. So you can dump, composted stuff on it all you want, but if there's no organisms in that, there's nothing to break that down. So just learning the relationship between the minerals, boron. I don't know that much about it, but I have a friend who's a farmer. Boron is missing from our agricultural land. If it's not in the soil, it's like a keystone element.
But yet the plant will grow without it.
It will grow without it.
It will almost look the same.
It will look the same. It'll have the same caloric content.
But boron itself is beneficial for hormones and for osteoporosis and for a lot of beneficial things. And we don't know it's not in there because it tastes kind of the same and it looks kind of the same.
Yeah, it might even look prettier than it did back then, I mean, my cabbage isn't beautiful, but it's certainly nutritious.
Right. And that connection, I think a lot of people they never connect the fact that what that food had to go through to get to that grocery store or to that restaurant.
And what it's lost.
And, again, the soil-based organisms, I'm a huge fan of that. I kind of felt like I had a stomach bug coming on. The soil-based organisms seemed to really take the edge off of that. I got better so fast because of that. And I'm so connected to regenerative farming. That's different than organic. Organic's important, but that's not really the farming method for the big-time future. We're depleting the soils to the point we may only have 20 to 30 years left if we keep losing the nutrients, the nitrogen from the lands by farming methods that are now in place. They're starting to change. And again, the movie, The Biggest Little Farm, sounds like you live that kind of life. And I encourage anyone to watch that. It is so interesting about how this couple came into a dead land and in 3 years developed it into a Garden of Eden, basically, with a very balanced cohabitation of every single bug and coyote and animal there is. And they figured out how nature really wants it to be.
Right.
We lost that game plan somewhere. Well, part of it was we needed to grow a lot of food. This was very efficient, and efficiency is important, but not if it's devastating in the long run. And that's what's happened to us now. And supplementally, I mean, I don't see how people could not say, even people who are kind of not really into supplements, considering just what we've said, how could you think you could be optimally healthy without backing it up with some supplements? Because I make very good choices, but I'm a single guy. I eat out a lot. I do the very best I can, But I would not go without the backup plan of soil-based and the things that I always do. And
It's
again, people who can't afford it, do it twice a week. It's going to still be very beneficial.
Yeah, and pills, I mean, it's not fun to swallow pills, It's not eating, making protein powders, greens powders. It's not the same as eating. There is something about sitting down to a meal that is balanced, that has an effect on our emotions, our mind, our spirit, and our physical body. And that is something that's very well known in Ayurvedic medicine. Sit down, eat a meal. Don't do it standing up. Don't eat a bar. Don't do, But supplementation does fill those gaps. And I hear it all the time. I've heard it from my family my entire adult life. I hear it from friends. I hear it from people that I work with. We've got a couple that come and do construction on our farm. And they're so funny. They're just like, well, my sister, she takes all these supplements, so I just don't want to take a pill. And I'm just like, but you have a health problem. Oh, I'll be fine. And I'm like, but your skin doesn't look healthy. You don't can you not see that you need some help there? And I'm not really sure why my advice is falling on deaf ears, but it happens, and it happens to you too, I think.
Every day.
And I don't want people to take pills and powders in place of eating.
Yes.
You have to sit back, observe your own situation. What do you have access to? What are you willing to do? Some people are only willing to take pills, and this is where the pharmaceutical industry has its foothold. And I get upset with doctors that don't know anything about nutrition, but in their defense, a lot of their patients won't listen to any advice other than just give me a pill and let me get out of here.
And they need to meet the patient where the patient is.
You do have to meet.
But also trying to encourage maybe a little more open conversation, maybe by giving an example, by leading by example. And a lot of healthcare practitioners, there's clinics right up the road here, and they're back there smoking cigarettes at their breaks.
Right.
I mean, those are the health people that are taking care of us.
At least if I saw them spray some vitamin C spray after smoking the cigarette, at least they know that they have to balance that out.
That's right.
And I'm big on hacking. I feel like, I love to drink wine. I like to have a cocktail here and there.
Too.
I love some creme brulee, so I'm going to hack and balance that out.
Yes, same here.
But when somebody's really got a health problem, here's the compassion part, Ed. If you really have some serious health problems, your decisions really aren't your own anymore. Because most of the health problems people have come from a messed up gut biome. And that messed up gut biome comes from a messed up food biome and a messed up soil biome and a messed up air biome and a messed up water biome. And their skin biome even is messed up. And really what we know now is that those little microorganisms are making neurotransmitters and hormones and enzymes and other signaling molecules that are hijacking your brain. So when you say, I'm not supposed to eat sugar, I'm not supposed to eat sugar, I'm not supposed to eat sugar, I'm going to eat sugar, it's not just you. It's not just your willpower. Willpower alone doesn't help. And this is where supplementation is so important. Someone like you, your staff, they have to come in and say, we're going to intercept this messaging. And we're going to intercept it so many times that we can change the message to the brain to where this person, this patient, this customer, this client, suddenly one morning says, I feel like I have a choice over whether I choose cake or a good egg scramble for breakfast. I feel like I have a choice today. Because before that, they didn't feel like they had a choice. They really don't feel like they have a choice. Their brain is hijacked.
It is.
So we have to have compassion. You're not overweight because you have no willpower. You have a gazillion organisms in you screaming, eat sugar. And we have to intercept that messaging. And you really can't do that without supplementation. And a place like Nutrition World is there to really help people with that. Pharmaceutical medication is not there for that.
Nope.
That is not what they do well. Don't rely on them for that.
They do well in acute care and urgent medicine, very well, but they don't do well in the chronic and in the preventative aspect. We have to, again, take control of our own health. And, I'm a huge fan of what we call Core 4. And really all it is a green drink, making sure you're doing a right multivitamin. There's many to choose from that we are very careful about. One, Garden of Life, is fantastic. And then doing a magnesium and omega-3 and then vitamin D. If somebody just did that, I've seen blood work change very significantly in 3 months just by doing that alone. And we have a lab here, and a lot of our clients and customers now are getting what we have put together, a preventative package to really look at aging and inflammation and the things that create mitochondrial damage as we get older. And, we are not F-150 trucks that just one little thing breaks and you fix it and you're good to go. As we age, it's a synergistic effect, and it's downstream and upstream. If one thing's happening, there's a lot of things happening. You just may see the one thing. And so to address this and fix it, it takes, a plan. It does. And I love the fact that you're talking about being hijacked, because I've got to a point now where I've just put together a plan of eating and lifestyle where I eat pretty low carbs Monday through Friday, eat about 60 carbs. But on weekends, I'll have my Mexican food. I might have a tiramisu on a Saturday night. That'd be about it. I don't really have any cravings because I've got the chemistry right. I've got the microbiome right.
Exactly.
The microbiome is like you having a family of, let's just say a family of 20, if you lived on the farm with 20 people and you were all in the same kind of community and you were all very helpful to each other. Well, if you're helpful, that's great. But what if you had 18 of those 20 who were kind of
freeloaders?
Yeah, freeloaders, and they weren't compassionate and they weren't very educated to help you. You can see the challenge with that. Well, that's what happens when your microbiome is really not doing well, which is most people. Microbiome, again, a lot of it's in the gut, but like you said, it's even on the skin. It's everywhere, and they outnumber us. And they're being fed or not fed by food.
And thoughts.
Pardon?
And our thoughts.
And our thoughts. Emotions play a humongous role. The older I get and the more stories I hear, the more I realize the impact and the toxicity of shoving emotions down and trying to hide and distract yourself from them. And that the fact that we don't really have a good system to help people through that. So I'm partially always cleansing myself of the emotions, or balancing them, I guess is a better way, because I know nutrients alone are not going to keep me optimally healthy. Exercise alone, I'm there 5 days a week in the gym, but there's still something missing. And that missing is being in a contented, joyous state that's not being drugged down by the ghost of my past, and working on that inner journey. And that, I guess, comes from being older. I certainly wasn't like this at 25.
Right.
And now that I'm 105, I'm thinking a little more
great, Ed.
about that. So, we got only a few more minutes, but as far, again, as the soil, well, I mean, what does a person do? I know nutrition work can help them greatly with a plan for supplements. We actually help a lot with, of course, blood testing, and also some of the emotional components. We have some practitioners that help you with that. But when you start thinking of your eating plan, what would be some good advice for people to raise their level?
You've got your core four. I've got my trifecta of health. I see it as a triangle. And there's just some things that link us back to ancestral ways of eating and living, which was really only a couple hundred years ago, that we can't do without in supplementation. Everybody needs a probiotic. Why? Because we're not eating out of the soil. I really don't need soil-based organisms anymore because I throw the ball for my dog. And he dropped it in the sheep poop that was in the pasture. So I know I'm getting soil-based organisms all the time from my dog, but I still we have gummies that have soil-based organisms in it. So I like them. I eat them anyway. But a probiotic with lacto and bifido, because I don't eat enough fermented food. And neither do most people.
Nope.
And we always did. Our food was either slightly spoiled or fermented for preservation, or we were eating it straight out of the soil or straight off of an animal. So if you aren't doing those things, you need a probiotic. So that's number one. Number two, I'm with you. D3, but I put that in the endocannabinoid system corner because there's so many things that help your endocannabinoid system. Part of it is getting outside, exercising. We were always outside. Even, if you live in the far, far, far north and you herd reindeer, they're drinking that reindeer milk, they're eating reindeer meat, reindeer organs, and they're getting the D3 that reindeer has created out of eating lichen. This has been proven now. And so even people who aren't that exposed to direct sunlight are getting it from their diet. We don't. We do not. So supplement your D3. It's extremely important. Now you can combine two corners at once if you do an omega-3, which is the third thing that everybody is missing. Do a cod liver oil that has D3 in it naturally occurring. Now you're getting it the way our ancestors did. So you could do that. The other thing about the endocannabinoid system, it's about sleep, stress management. It's about exercise, right? Endocannabinoid system doesn't mean CBD or THC. We have a system, even echinacea, kava, truffles, the mushrooms, chocolate. There's all these things, turmeric, that interact with the endocannabinoid system throughout human history and throughout the world. people have an endocannabinoid system that is being nourished. Your stress depletes it, period. That causes you digestive problems. That makes you need a probiotic. And if you don't have omega-3 fats in your diet, you can't even make your own endocannabinoids. Your pharmacy can't run. You can't make them. The balancing ones, we need omega-6 and omega-3. We get way too much omega-6 from Mexican food on Saturdays.
Yep.
And so we don't need to supplement that. But we do need omega-3s because why? Our ancestors were out eating seeds, nuts, eating an animal that was grazing, eating fish, and we always got omega-3s, and we don't now. We just don't. So these 3 things are crucial. And then on the side, if you need help with sleep, if you need help with stress, your customer walks in, your client, your patient, and they're not sleeping and they're stressing, we have to deal with that first. We have to deal with that first. It's even more important than a probiotic if we're on a budget, because if they're not sleeping and they're stressing, they're going to undo all the good that you're doing with the supplementation. So it's all about prioritizing. It is about meeting a person where they're at. What are they complaining about the most? What's really, really, really bothering them right now? And we have to address
as you
that.
said, there's some underlying things like lack of sleep that's going to devastate the ability of the good stuff to work. I had a lady just yesterday, and she's going through serious depression. She had been on drugs before, and she just didn't like the numbness factor of the pharmaceuticals. So she went off of them, did pretty well for a year or two. Now she's kind of falling back, and she's wanting to stay away from the pharmaceuticals. Well, we get talking about it, and she literally sleeps 3 hours a night. And I said, you know what? Regardless of what you do nutritionally, it's not going to work very well until we can work on your sleep. And I have a podcast called The Holistic Navigator. If you Google that with the word sleep, I have my 35-minute video audio on how to re-regulate your sleep. It gives you some very, very good points. But it's very important. It's very vital. In fact, I have this ring called an Aura ring, which I've talked about. It has been a lifesaver to me because it reads exactly how much REM and deep and oxygen levels and heart rate variability. And so it's allowed me to put together a plan. Even though I'm very intuitive about my health, it taught me maybe these supplements weren't helping me. Maybe they were actually preventing me from sleeping well because I was doing them too late. How about looking at my phone too late at night? How about getting home too late? How about a lot of different factors? Well, now I've connected the dots where I've re-regulated my sleep based on this ring. It's hard to do that without information. And again, doing nothing is not going to work. You have to have a plan of action. And again, I say this often, create a team. Have a team. One of your team members is your regular doc. If you get a bad splinter or you get a UTI or you get this, you go because they're really good at diagnosing. They're really good at keeping you from getting in serious condition if something's going on. But your other team members, you cannot just have that as your own. You have to create other team members. I have about 4 or 5. I have an emotional person, we have a massage therapist. I think that's very important. An integrative physician that deals with more holistic ideas. A lot of these things are part of my team, and that's what keeps me as optimally healthy as I can. Yep. And I know you wouldn't disagree with that.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I wouldn't. And I know that people are on a budget. And so back to that point, we have to help people identify what's their most important priority in that moment. And then when it comes to certain things, I think people think, well, I can't afford the best supplements, so I'll just get something cheap at, XYZ big box store. I was at TJ Maxx and I saw this collagen supplement, so I'll grab it, And we think that we're doing ourselves a favor. Really, for almost everything except certain herbals where you have to reach a certain amount to be effective, buy the best that you can find, even if you take it 3 days a week.
I love that.
Please do not buy a cheap fish oil that is oxidized. It's going to toxify you. Yeah. Please don't buy a cheap multivitamin that is made in a chemical laboratory and represents something from your chemistry 1 class in high school. It's not helping you.
Beautiful.
Get the best quality, most food-like supplement that you can, that your body can utilize, even if you budget it, even if you only take it on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. A lot of people take their supplements 5 days a week, take 2-day break.
I take 1 day a week off most of the time.
Yep.
Every Monday.
Yep. And just let your body, there is such a thing as over supplementing. Too many antioxidants aren't actually good for you, Babying your body. It's just like fertilizing your garden instead of making the roots grow down to find things. You don't want to over coddle your body by giving it everything without making it work for it. We want our body to reach and stretch and be a little bit challenged. And this is where the things like intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating and, carb cycling comes in, because it's tapping into an ancestral way. If you woke up in the morning and stumbled out of your cave and everyone ate the bear meat last night and there's nothing to eat, you have to go hunting and gathering on an empty stomach. Without saying, oh, my blood sugar, I'm going to pass out, right? You got to get moving.
Yes.
And people didn't used to complain about that. They did the chores in the morning without breakfast. They milked the cow without breakfast. I guarantee you.
I love it. I love your connection with all this. And, I did a podcast called How to Be Your Own Superhero, and it talked exactly about if we don't put our body and sometimes our mind to the test, as the last 50,000 years of life had to make us do. We had to do the work when we were hungry. We had times we couldn't eat. We had times where we were very cold, times we were very hot. Guess what? That did not hurt us in most cases. It strengthened us. Yeah. And to go and live a soft lifestyle actually weakens us on so many levels. I mean, even in the medical field, just think about 30 years ago if you had knee surgery, we need to rest. You need to not be active. We need to let you stay down. No, even they know now within one day you're up, because the body freezes. It becomes a tin man if you don't move it. And I want to say lastly, before we end this, you and I did a podcast on the omega-3 issue, I'm pretty certain. That was fantastic, where you talked about dosing, quality, and it's on The Holistic Navigator on the other podcast site, and it was fantastic. So if people want to log in and listen, I want to know all about omega-3. Listen to you on that podcast, because you explained it extremely well. I've told many people about that, so I encourage people. So I want to thank you for all your long travels here, and we will spread the word, because you and I have the same passion for doing this, and I think you wake up in the morning and go to bed at night with the same feelings that I have, that we have a job to do in this world. Yeah. And I really feel that in a certain way, people like you and I are heroes, because we're fighting a big battle in some ways, because the agenda is not really happy and friendly to us. And we don't have to do this. So people like you are standing up, speaking the truth in the midst of people who are kind of putting us down for that. But you know what? There's a crowd of people who are really resonating and understand exactly what you talk about with primal and ancient wisdom and connecting back to the nature and the earth that did us very well for the tens of thousands of years. Again, I would want to be in that old world, because if I accidentally broke my leg, I want somebody to set my leg. If I had a terrible infection, I'm thankful that we have doctors. But as far as the long-term optimal health, let's get back to our common sense and our common wisdom and our instincts that we have lost. I mean, the wild animals still have it. If they have terrible belly problems, they'll eat bitter foods. Right. I mean, we sell bitters for people who have that, but we don't instinctively, because we've lost it. That's okay. We have people like you who are helping to educate them. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ed. It's great.